that will make you never open your door again. Part 9. The Armed Intruders. Jake had always prided himself on being cautious. He lived in a quiet neighborhood, tucked away from the hustle and bustle of the city, and he had always felt safe behind the walls of his home. The alarm system, the cameras, the locked doors, it was a routine that had given him peace of mind. But all that changed one fateful evening when he received an alert that shattered his sense of security. It was just past 2 a.m. when the notification from his Ring doorbell camera buzzed on his phone. Motion detected at your front door. Jake had been lying in bed, the glow of the television casting shadows across the room. At first he thought it might be another false alarm. Maybe a car had passed by or a stray animal had wandered into view. But when he opened the app, his heart sank. A man was standing at his front door dressed in a dark hoodie. His face was partially obscured, but the outline of his figure was unmistakable. The man didn't ring the doorbell. He didn't knock. He simply stood there, motionless, his eyes fixed on the camera. It was a strange, unsettling sight. Something about the way he stood there, not moving, not doing anything, made Jake's stomach churn. The eerie stillness of the scene set his nerves on edge. Jake stared at the screen, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. His first instinct was to ignore it. Maybe it was just a passerby, a delivery driver who had gotten confused about the address. But as the seconds ticked by, the man did not move, did not turn away. It was as though he was waiting for something. The longer Jake watched, the more uneasy he became. Then, without warning, the man turned and walked away. Jake exhaled, unsure of what to make of it. But just as he was about to dismiss it as a coincidence, the same man reappeared on the camera, this time with a second figure. Jake's heart skipped a beat. The new figure was dressed in similar dark clothing, but unlike the first, this man was holding something. It wasn't immediately clear what it was, but the way the figure carried it made Jake's instincts flare with panic. The two men stood at the door, their movements deliberate. They didn't speak, they didn't knock or ring the bell. They simply waited. Jake's fingers trembled as he grabbed his phone. He wasn't sure what was happening, but he felt the weight of the situation bearing down on him. He quickly hit the button to speak through the intercom, his voice shaking. "Who are you? What do you want?" His words felt weak, unsure. For a moment, there was silence. The men didn't move. Then, the man holding the object stepped closer to the door. It became clearer now. He was holding a crowbar. The sight of it made Jake's blood run cold. The other man, standing slightly behind, glanced around, keeping a lookout. They weren't here for a casual visit. This was a robbery. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. Panic surged through him. He reached for his phone to call the police, but as his fingers hovered over the screen, the sound of a loud bang echoed through the house. The man with the crowbar struck the door hard. The force rattled the frame, and Jake felt the vibration travel through the floor beneath him. The door was no longer just a barrier. It had become the thin line between his safety and whatever these men intended to do. Jake's thoughts raced. He needed to do something. He couldn't just sit there, paralyzed by fear. He quickly scrambled to grab the phone and call the police, but before he could dial, the door shook again. The man with the crowbar was trying to force it open, and the sound was deafening. The next few seconds felt like an eternity. Jake could hear the muffled voices of the men outside, speaking in low, urgent tones. He couldn't make out the words, but the tension in their voices was unmistakable. They were getting frustrated, desperate. The pounding grew louder. Then came the worst possible sound. The unmistakable click of the door handle. The lock was turning. Jake's heart skipped a beat. He could see it in his mind, those men getting inside. The door would give way, and they would come for him. The thought of them inside his home, of his safety being stripped away, made him feel helpless. His breath came in ragged gasps, and he felt his hands go clammy. He needed to think fast. Just then, he heard a voice from the doorbell speaker, loud and clear. "You don't want to do this." Jake's own voice shook as he spoke, but he tried to sound confident, even though fear gripped him. "I've called the police. They're on their way. You need to leave." He couldn't be sure they would believe him, but it was the only thing he could think to say. For a moment, there was silence. The pounding on the door stopped. Jake's breath caught in his throat, and he held his phone tight, praying they would leave. But then, the second figure spoke. A low, threatening growl that made Jake's skin crawl. "We'll be inside long before they get here. You should have opened the door when we gave you the chance." Jake froze, realizing the full extent of the danger he was in. These weren't just random burglars. They knew exactly what they were doing. They were prepared, patient, and they had no intention of backing down. The second figure stepped back slightly, gesturing to the first. With a nod, the man with the crowbar took a step back and swung the tool with all his might, slamming it into the door again. The sound of wood splintering echoed through the house. Jake's pulse raced. There was no more time. The door was coming down. He needed to act. Desperation surged through him as he ran to the other side of the house, his mind racing. He considered his options. There was no way out. The only thing he could do now was try to make it to the back door, but as he reached the hallway, he heard the unmistakable sound of a door creaking open behind him. A third figure emerged, stepping into the hallway from the shadows, blocking his path. This figure wasn't masked. The dim light revealed the man's face. Someone Jake didn't recognize, but someone who clearly wasn't afraid to do whatever it took to get inside. The man raised a hand, holding something small and metallic in his grip. Jake's eyes widened in terror. The third figure had a gun. In that moment, Jake understood. This wasn't just a break-in. This was an assault. A violent, coordinated attack. And he was trapped in the middle of it. Time seemed to slow. Jake knew that the only way out was to fight for his life. He wasn't going down without a fight. As Jake stood frozen, the sound of the door rattling under the pressure of the armed intruders sent chills down his spine. The feeling of helplessness, knowing that these men were determined to break in, was overwhelming. His home was no longer a sanctuary. It had become the stage for a violent confrontation. The terror of facing armed assailants left Jake with no choice but to act. But what could he do when the danger was so immediate and real? What will Jake do next? Will he survive this terrifying ordeal, or will the intruders finally break in? Don't miss part 10, the repeated break-in, where the terror intensifies and Jake is pushed to his limits. Subscribe now to stay updated and make sure you don't miss the next jaw-dropping chapter. The nightmare is far from over.